first, Sabby, let me pose this question to you. As far as the entertainment landscape and the content that they put out, what is your overall opinion?
It's repetitive.
Hmm.
It's repetitive, and I also feel like it's forced sometimes. The quality has decreased over the years, and I think the box office numbers show that too.
Well, you're not wrong. So one of the things that I wanted to do was, and we've talked about this before, but I think this is a great stream, for this, is there was a tweet that was put out by More Perfect Union, and they actually go into depth for this, and we're going to have a little chat about this even more. First off, More Perfect Union, they say, do you ever feel like there's no original movies anymore? No new ideas? Now, anybody who's watching right now, stay with us here, all right? It continues, says, it's not just in your head. Over half the movies coming out of Hollywood now are prequels, sequels, reboots, or remakes. The reason? Corporate greed. It's time to break up Hollywood. All right. Y'all ready? Let's get it on, baby. This is going to be a topic that I've been wanting to talk about. All right. And Sabby, just please let me know, because I can't see you, to do it at moments when you want to pause.
You may have noticed something while watching movie trailers for upcoming releases. Every movie seems like it's either based on a book, a sequel, or yet another movie from a cinematic universe that never seems to stop expanding.
We were hoping it would stop on its own.
Well, I'm that you're not just imagining things. One researcher looked at the top 10 grossing films in the US since 1977 and found that since 2010, over 50% of these films were prequels, sequels, spin-offs, remakes, reboots, or cinematic universe expansions.
What?
In 2021, only one movie in the top 10 was an original idea, the movie Free Guy with Ryan Reynolds.
That's a new one.
And this isn't happening because Hollywood has simply run out of new ideas. It boils down to three major shifts in the entertainment industry. Shifts that meant Hollywood needed to go in on movies with brand recognition. Original great movies, even ones that audiences loved, became a riskier bet. For our purposes today, we'll call these shifts the three horsemen of the great original movie apocalypse. First, there is the horsemen of consolidation.
Looks like we too many.
In the 1980s and 90s, antitrust laws that kept TV and communication networks from becoming too big and powerful were either repealed or not enforced. The number of major players in TV and entertainment began to shrink. Movie theater companies also consolidated, which gave rise to the multiplex theater in the 90s. In 1995,
I did not know that, though, Sabby. Like, I didn't know that the different movie theater companies, they all just consolidated under just quite a few. I mean, it's not surprising, but I wasn't thinking about that at the time. You're muted.
I didn't realize that either, but I guess it makes sense.
Yeah. Interesting.
the top 5 movie chains owned a third of U.S. theaters. By 2016, they owned over 53%. According to researcher Matt Stoller, these giant multiplex theaters jolted the Hollywood power structure. Movies now made most of their ticket sales in the first weeks, so there wasn't time for word of mouth. Brand recognition was the best way to draw audiences quickly. Then in the 2000s came the rise of streaming, and Hollywood became obsessed with gaining market share, taking big bets to grow as large as possible. But don't just take my word for it. Here's media mogul and Discovery board member John Malone.
There's no question that the equity markets right now are so interested in growth above all other criteria. And this is like the bubble in the late 90s through 2000. It's all about growth. This is a land rush.
Of course, the fastest way for a company to grow is to merge with another company.
The deal that everyone from Wall Street to Washington is abuzz about.
If approved, it would be one of the biggest media and technology mergers in history.
There are newer, bigger, more powerful kids on the block.
Over the past 12 years, mergers in the film and TV industry totaled over $400 billion in deal value.
Disney will acquire Fox Entertainment assets for $52.4 billion.
In 2017, just one of those mergers, the Walt Disney Company's acquisition of 21st Century Fox, created one company that controlled around 40% of the domestic box office and employed nearly 30% of TV and film writers. Consolidation in Hollywood has actually led to fewer films. After the Disney 21st Century Fox merger, Disney announced plans to cut Fox's film slate in half and remake a number of Fox films for Disney+. This consolidation makes it so it is harder for creators to break into the industry. There are not as many small to mid-sized films to cut their teeth on, and it gives them less options for places to sell their ideas.
You know, Sabby, let me ask you this. You ever seen Napoleon Dynamite?
Yes. I love that movie.
Yeah. And the thing is that we all love it, but because of the consolidation, we won't get movies that are freshly new ideas that are made like that. That's what makes me sad.
Well, that also was not a big budget movie. That was it was a lower budget, and sometimes those are the better stories, to be honest.
Yeah. You know, actually, you know what? I really wish that I would have invited Kevin Ronka from Right Brain Studios on for this one. Man, I should have invited. I'm just now thinking about it. I should have invited him on. But yeah. So I think that honestly, this it's a tragedy.
Then there is the Horsemen of vertical integration. When it comes to original shows and films, a single streaming company like Netflix does what used to be done by multiple companies. For decades, the companies that showed movies to audiences, movie theaters, distributors, were owned by separate companies. This meant that theaters could decline to show a studio's movie if it didn't draw audiences and show another studio's movie instead. But today, one company, like Netflix, HBO, Apple, or Disney, decide what gets made and where it's shown. This gives them more control to decide who profits and who doesn't. And another thing streaming did was fundamentally change the value of content. Netflix only shares viewership data on its content when it wants to. Their business model doesn't require them to. TV networks, for instance, had to establish a market value for their content to know what to charge advertisers, and they had to share those ratings to get that price. Netflix doesn't have ads. And with the industry reforming itself around the streaming model, it's become difficult to determine the value of anything. And it starves out the marketplace where you would go to sell that content.
Just one thing, though. I mean, you know how if you have a lot of competition and you get a lot of feedback from people, you know, capitalists will say, well, that's just a marketplace of ideas, and then it can improve things over time. But once you start to consolidate everything and then you don't have competition, really it's just we'll spoon feed you whatever the hell we want to, and you're going to like it. That's what it feels like. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree. I mean, I don't know. And I hate to bring up the writers because I know, they're fighting for their own, benefits as well. Mm-hmm. But I feel like the writing is not as good as it used to be. Like if I'm comparing it to like the box office movies and I'm comparing to some of the movies that I see on Netflix, mm-hmm. there's a difference in the quality. And I don't know if Netflix just has different writers, because there are movies on Netflix that I thought were really, really well written, mm-hmm. And they don't necessarily have a big name, mm-hmm. Starring in the movie. And when I compare the script to these movies that are coming out in the box office, there's no comparison. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, what happened there? And it's not just Netflix, Amazon Prime, Hulu. It seems like the quality seems to be better if we're talking about the movies, it seems like some of the quality seems to be better on the streaming platforms than it does in the box office these days.
Yeah, it's just I also see some original films on streaming platforms, but I don't see them in the theaters. You know, like for instance, there was the one with Jamie Foxx called Project Power.
That was
a
really
movie
good.
I was just like, oh, this is interesting. So I watched it, but the thing is that it didn't come out in theaters; it came out on Netflix. All right,
Right.
it's
That's just one of the few though.
yeah, very few.
Mm-hmm.
But the writers aren't getting paid as much for different movies as they used to either. That's a whole another conversation too.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And with no metrics and no marketplace, creators and roles across the industry are finding themselves with less control and less profit. At a time where demand for content is high in our peak TV era, writer pay actually went down 14% over the last 5 years. This leads us to our third horseman, cutting out creatives.
Got to mute so that we don't get a copyright claim.
Yeah.
At first, the rise of streamers like Netflix opened up the market of ideas for creators. It paid them more upfront, it gave them more artistic freedom. But as the Netflix model became the model, even in-demand creators had difficulty negotiating ownership.
This is what you and I were just talking about, and as they get it further into, it's like writers get screwed, creators get screwed now.
Yep.
In 2017, Netflix offered Michaela Cole $1 million for her show I May Destroy You, but Netflix refused to give her any rights. Cole chose to walk away.
You became aware when you had a deal offered to you of a huge amount of money that they were also going to try and take some of the copyright. Was that very hard for you to take that amount of control back and to say no to that amount of money?
Well, before we answer her question, by the way, if you guys saw Black Panther Wakanda Forever, she was in the movie. If you remember. And also, this is maybe shameless of me, but I wish she was a little bit taller, but I would love for her to play Storm.
Yeah, I can see that.
She got the face. She got the face for Storm. I'm just saying. Sabs, we need to make that into a campaign. Make Michaela Cole Storm.
Yeah, she has the cheekbones and everything for it.
Yep. Anyway, let's continue. Let's hear what she says.
Well, the first thing I asked was, why do you want to take all of the copyright? But just because I want transparency. And when the answer is, that's just not the way it is, I'm already out. That doesn't sound like a good answer to me.
No.
It sounds cloudy.
Without any intellectual property or financial stake in their work, creators and independent producers are basically reduced to contract players. So what's the point of creating something great if all the upside goes to a streaming giant? But the film and TV industry doesn't have to work this way. The UK is a great example of what can happen when monopolization of the entertainment industry is kept in check. In 2004, the British government created the Terms of Trade, a formal code that required the country's public broadcasters to commission 25% of their programming from independent producers, and to allow those producers to retain secondary rights to their work. It allowed UK producers to financially benefit from a successful show, and it gave American audiences a long list of programming: X Factor, Dancing with the Stars, Undercover Boss, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. The UK is now the second largest TV exporter in the world. In the first 4 years after the requirements went into effect, the income from selling the rights to these shows abroad grew 22% annually. And with these terms of trade, consolidation just wasn't as necessary. In 2017, of the companies that sold content to these broadcasters, 42% were small to mid-sized production companies. it is also easier for new talent to break into the television industry in the UK. From 2008 to 2017, about a third of new content sold annually to these channels were made by new entrants. On this side of the pond, there are major questions over whether the consolidation of Hollywood and the streaming model is sustainable.
TLDR, no.
Yep. Yep.
Wall Street investors are eager to see profitability after years of investment and growth. And writers, actors, and directors are fighting for terms within this new landscape that allow them the ability and the incentive to make great art. They are also fighting to make original ideas possible and profitable again. And the outcome of this fight could decide whether the next great original movie ever gets made at all.
So really, it is just about corporate greed. This is why you're exhausted. This is why, and Sabby, let me tell you this. I used to scoff at the idea of being exhausted from, say, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I was like, it's so entertaining. To me, I'm like, why are people saying they're tired? I'm not tired. Until
I think it's gotten to be a bit much, and I think it's and I love Marvel. I've loved Marvel since I was a kid. I used to have the comic books. I had the little Marvel cards. We used to trade those in school and all that kind of stuff. But I think what's happening is there is such a thing as too much of a good thing, and it's hard sometimes for me to even keep up because it's like the movie is coming out and then now you got to watch this show on Disney Plus before you see the new Marvel movie so you understand what's happening in sequence. So now you have the Marvel shows on Disney Plus. So it's like you had to get another streaming platform, sign up for another one to watch the Marvel shows so you understand what's happening. So like, for example, the very first one, WandaVision. Okay. It's like you really kind of needed to see that before you saw that last Doctor Strange movie. You see what I'm saying? Like it's so now it's like you have to watch the shows in order to follow the movies in that order. And then there were these switcheroos that to me just did not make any damn sense. There were Marvel shows on Netflix. Luke Cage was one of them, right? Jessica Jones was one, and loved Luke Cage. When Disney bought Marvel, those shows ended. And to me, it didn't make any sense because Luke Cage had just finished that second season, and I thought Luke Cage was phenomenal. Then they announced that Disney bought Marvel and the shows are going to be on Disney Plus. But those shows like Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, Daredevil, like the ones that were already on Netflix,
Iron Fist,
they didn't continue those on Disney Plus. So it was kind of weird. And then instead they started with WandaVision, Loki, Falcon Winter Soldier, and like those are good shows. The Hawkeye show, they're all good. But it has gotten to the point now where is it just too much to keep up with at this point in time? And you and I talked about this earlier about Endgame, right? Endgame was phenomenal.
It was.
And I'm gonna keep it real. After I saw Endgame, I said it's gonna be very difficult to beat that.
Look.
So is it quantity above quality? Because I would rather have less movies with better quality than Disney just shooting out all these movies multiple times throughout the year and starting new shows multiple times throughout the year. And I got to keep up with all of it. And the quality's not that great.
Look, I'm going to tell you what my boyfriend said. He said, first the thing he said was most of everything after Endgame had just been a lot of, fine, because Marvel has just been throwing stuff out to keep us busy while it figures out the narrative direction, and it's exhausting. He said, yeah, That and the fact that the two-part Avengers movie climax of all this seems like 3 years away, when people are already feeling pretty over the cinematic universe format now. He says Secret War, the next Avengers movie, Secret Wars, is literally about two universes colliding into each other and everyone fighting it out on whatever is left. I can see the potential, but still, will anyone really care by then? Especially if the MCU inevitably keeps going afterwards. So my question was like, how can you top Endgame? Because this is literally a universal thing. But Secret Wars is now multiversal. But I'm like, after Secret Wars, what's the biggest thing? How can you go after multiversal? You can't do bigger than that. Like, the only thing you can do is have the one above all fighting the Living Tribunal. But
I think it's just, and you know what? It's not just Marvel. It's these other sequels too. Like, do we really need another Fast and the Furious movie?
No, we don't.
Like, it just
don't need one.
I feel like they're running out of ideas, right? Do we need all these reboots over and over again? Did we need? I love Rocky, but did we need that many Rocky movies? The later Rocky movies are not good. They don't compare to the first and the second one. They don't compare to the first three. So why they just keep like rebooting all this stuff? And I'm like, do you really need that? Like, then they came back and they made another Independence Day. It was awful.
It was
Did
awful.
you need another Independence Day?
Mm-mm.
So it's just like, we have to ask, like, we can go to DC. DC, we can play that game with you too. Okay. Because DC, your shows are good, but your movies. No. Do you need another Batman series?
And then let's not get started on Star Wars. Okay, my geek side is about to come out. Look, everybody loves the original trilogy, right? The original trilogy, time honored, right? And it was directed by other people, but it was consulted and heavily influenced by George Lucas because he was the writer, and he just hired directors for the original trilogy. Then we come to the prequels, which is what I love, which is nostalgic for me as a kid, right? Because when I first saw what's it called? The Phantom Menace, I was, I think, 13 or 14, right? And my favorite is Revenge of the Sith overall. But the thing is that those were directed by George Lucas, right? Then we get to the sequel trilogy. These are the ones of The Force Awakens, you see The Last Jedi, and Rise of Skywalker. Those three movies were all after Disney bought Lucasfilms.
Yeah, and you can see the difference.
Yes.
Yeah.
Look, The Force Awakens was just Star Wars: A New Hope modern day. It was just a New Hope remake. And then The Rise of Skywalker was just a remake of Return of the Jedi. That's it. That's
Don't forget the Han Solo movie, which did not do well.
Oh God, Lord.
There was that too. Now I will say Rogue One, I did like Rogue One. Rogue One was kind of its own thing. I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah.
But it's like, how far do you go? I don't know. Like I don't want Hollywood just to make movies, especially like the box office shows you that these movies are not performing the way that they would have like years ago, right? So I think it's just, I don't know, man. Like for me, and I'm very picky about what I'm going to spend my money on. And if I go to the movies, I'm not going to go to the movies to see something that I think may be okay.
Yeah. And there's a lot of Black people that actually have something to say about the new Little Mermaid. Now, they're not mad that Little Mermaid is Black. They're mad that they're not taking original stories and folk tales from Africa and adapting it to a Disney movie?
Well, it is just the Little Mermaid. Like it really is just the Little Mermaid, the live action version.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't seen it because I've heard so much about this movie to the point where I'm just like, look, it's a mermaid. Get over it, people. It's a mermaid. But I think that, like, you know, there's no way that everyone is going to be satisfied. You're always going to have those issues, right? But it's not even just Star Wars and Marvel. It's also things like the Flash movie. Like, and we can talk about, Ezra's issues, which I think he should have been pulled from that, but that's just me.
Definitely.
But to me, it was like you already had an actor playing the Flash on TV for 9 seasons.
9 seasons?
9 seasons. 9. The Flash is on season 9. Instead of going to the person who is already the Flash, which is Grant Gustin, why didn't you get him to play the Flash in the Flash movie? No, they went and got a whole different character, whole different dude to get him to play, who also definitely had some serious issues, abducting women, like this kind of shit. That's the guy that they chose to play the Flash. To me, that made no sense. You already had a Flash.
Yep.
It's like making a Green Arrow movie and asking someone else at the time when Arrow was still alive. It's like making a Green Arrow movie and asking someone else to play Oliver Queen besides, Stephen Amell, who was already playing Oliver Queen. It just don't make no sense to me.
They just, yeah, that's another thing I think that, people really don't take into account. But one of the things I wanted to show is this chart that a lot of people may not be aware of. And this is a chart that, a few people have probably seen, but I think this is imperative that we show this as well. So this is I might have to shrink this just a little bit, but this is the chart showing the consolidation of all these media conglomerates, right? In the bright blue, you have Disney, Comcast, AT&T, and others. Now, this is back in 2018, but if you look, it's like they're all basically owned. Like Comcast owned Universal, DreamWorks, Focus. I think it's CNBC, Sci-Fi, USA, and then Disney owns Fox, Lucasfilm, Touchstone, Pixar, ABC, Marvel, 20th Century Fox, Fox Searchlight. You have all these different ones that are really owned by just a very small few. And, with that being said, this is why there is no type of there's no type of new creativity, because it is a risk. Think about all your biggest franchises that you ever loved, right? Harry Potter was a risk. Let's forget the creator of Harry Potter. The franchise itself was a risk, right? Star Wars was a risk. Lord of the Rings was a risk. Look, remember, Iron Man was a risk. The start of the MCU, that was a risk that Paramount took. And now look. But the thing is that with capitalism and with consolidation, like the lady said, too many risks happen and they don't want to touch it, even though it may turn out to be a blockbuster.
Yep.
And
It's all about making money for them. That's the thing. Like they just want to make money. I don't even think some of these like producers actually care if the script is good, if the quality is there. I feel like they've lowered the bar. And they feel like if all they have to do is just create a lot of action scenes and explosives and things like that to get you, wowed or whatever. And then that's all you need and it'll be fine. It's like the guy Michael Bay. Michael Bay, kind of known for the movies with the explosions and stuff. It's like I think they feel like if they have that, then they don't necessarily really need to have a good script. And this is why like more people are choosing to watch these movies that are made by Netflix or made by Amazon Prime, because they're putting more quality into it, or they're making movies that make you think. You know how many movies I've watched on Netflix that are Netflix only movies? At the end of the movie, I actually had to think and say, maybe it could be this or maybe it could be that. When's the last time you saw like a movie at the movie theater that was like that? And that's a big part of the problem. Like I like to be challenged when I watch something. I don't want it to be obvious for me to figure out exactly what's going to happen with the plot. That's boring. And I feel like that's kind of where like, at least when it comes to the major movie theaters, I feel like that's kind of where they have gone. If you guys haven't had a chance, I started watching the Arnold Schwarzenegger documentary on Netflix. And one of the things that he said in reference to his career as an actor is he said eventually he got to the point where there was nothing else for him to do. He said, what was I going to do? Keep playing the same role over and over again? I had already done all these action roles. I'd already done this and done that. I topped the box office multiple times. He said, yeah, I could have just continued doing that. He was like, but it becomes repetitive. So he moved on to something else. And I think that's a smart move. And it's just like, don't just do something. Hollywood find one thing that works and they just continue doing it because it works instead of challenging themselves.
Yeah, it's just like, and I said this earlier, it's like, okay, you want to make your kid happy. Okay, here's some ice cream. Yay! But you want to keep making them happy. So day after day after day, you give them ice cream, 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 ice cream. And next thing you know, you ask them a month later, they're like, you want some ice cream? They're like,
yeah.
Nah. And that's the thing. That's what capitalism does. It's like, oh, this works. All right, press the button. Over, because we need that money. Over. And then next thing you know, it's like, yeah, that ain't stimulating me no more, babe.